Witchy and Weird podcast.
Hi, Witchy and Weird. We're here for another episode, and I'm joined by the lovely Amara, the Empress Oracle of Instagram, the most extraordinary woman ever to have lived. And yes. And we're definitely here to have like a really juicy, like expansive conversation. Amara helps people like literally like take control, feel empowered of their own timeline, like understand like manifestation and receiving and like all of that in such a different, like energetic, visceral way than a lot of us are like conditioned to, even in like new age spiritual stuff. It's like completely different. So I wanted to invite her on to have like this conversation for all the witchy and weird people. So welcome, Amara.
Thank you. And of course we have the siren blasting by. Hopefully that doesn't affect the recording. Listen, it's just here to announce that I'm here. Hello, I'm here. I feel welcomed. I'm excited. This is going to be so good.
Yeah. So my first question for you is kind of like, how did you like understand, because I know you went through like a career pivot, but like how did you come to understanding that like you're the person to bring this new reality for people? Like how did that come about?
The biggest thing for me was sitting with myself. So you mentioned a career pivot. So I have done a lot of different things, and I think people listening to this podcast can relate to that. I've done a lot of different things. I've worn a lot of different hats in my life. But funnily enough, the thing that I most wanted to talk about, energetics, quantum prosperity, magic, none of that really factored into what I was doing, and at least not in overt ways. And even when I started coaching, I started coaching last year. And I remember the first client I'd ever had, it was around structuring business and marketing and all these things, very masculine energy, heavy topics and conversations. And it didn't light me up in the same way. Nowhere in there did I factor in like intuition and, my empathic nature, psychicness. Again, none of the energetic work and beliefs that I was integrating in my life. And so I had kind of like a pretty stark rock bottom last year, at the end of last year, around 2020. So 2020 comes around and I'm in coaching, and I'm escalating really quickly. I'm making near 5-figure months every month, doing really, really amazing, but something's missing. And I launched something in November out of that place, in that space of something's missing, and crickets, nothing happens. And it was kind of this moment. It was this like pivotal moment where I realized this isn't what I want to do. And it's like, once that happened, this dark negative spiral took over. And I was just like, I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't the work for me. I don't know what I thought I could do, what I could accomplish, blah, blah, blah. And it just proceeded to get worse. So I was doing really well financially, and then everything just sort of like fell apart, like everything, structurally, financially, all the things. And through this process, this rock bottom, I often don't believe that we need rock bottoms to get to our next level. But what I do think is interesting about rock bottoms is it opens you up to a new perspective, because you're kind of at your lowest point, right? And so it's either you wallow at being at the bottom, or you look up and maybe you see light, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to test your rock climbing capabilities and see if you can get out of the other side, whatever it is, whatever sparks that perspective shift. But I was like, something needs to change. I don't know what. I'm not exactly happy in my life. I'm not exactly happy with what I'm doing. And I came to this conclusion in that like silence, right? Because a lot of silence happened. There was really nothing happening in business for me. Like, there weren't like client interactions and new things happening, new things launching. So business was quiet. Relationship wise, there was like a culling process happening where I was letting go of certain people in my life. So it left a lot of time for me to be alone with myself. And so you asked, how did I come to this is the work that I want to do? It's through that aloneness, funnily enough. And it's such a scary, vulnerable place. I remember I heard this years back. It was the speaker, and she was talking about how she was going through a similar dark time. And she ended up going into like a hot yoga class and she ended up on the mat, not realizing it was hot yoga. And the teacher's like, you need to sit in the hot loneliness. Like you have to sink in. And she ended up like bawling her eyes out on the mat because all of these emotions welled up, all of these, you know, just this big void opened up where a lot fell out and essentially, you know, presented itself to her. And I feel like that's what I went through at the end of last year. And then I started to put the pieces back together. The things I liked, the things that I didn't like. I wasn't trying to like divorce myself from anything or separate myself from anything or let go of anything in terms of like, I don't need this, it didn't serve me. I firmly believe like everything, good, bad, ugly, serves us.
Right.
So in the last 6 months or so, I was putting those pieces back together. Then I end up through just looking around on Instagram, I ended up encountering Captolia E and Captolia Online. And she was doing a lot of branding. She's like a brand enchantress. You know her, Amanda. And I was like, oh, here's this person who's doing something, to your point of like, this is something I've seen before, right? The work that I'm doing is something that has popped up, but it's not being done like anybody else I've seen. She's overtly witchy, overtly like you can tell she's a Scorpio from a mile away. Would come to find out later that she's a projector like I am. So that also influenced some of my decision making around like, do I want to be part of this person's world? Is this something that I really want to like dive into? And I was like, hell fucking yeah. Because at the end of the day, I should have checked. Cursing is okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Right? Okay. At the end of the day, who I was at 15 was essentially like the girl locked up in her room predicting and prophesizing, in all honesty. Like even back then, I'm going to do this. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to receive this. Crystals, trying to find like how to buy sage at 15 with no money. Like I was that person. I've always been the person that believes in fairies. I've always wanted to be a fairy. I've always wanted to fixate on the magic and the potential of this world rather than the brutality and the fear that happens in this world. So when I combine that with my love of really helping people enhance their lives, when I combine that with my love of helping people really sink in and savor their lives where they are now, because so much of my work, when we're talking about divine timing, right, and timeline jumping and quantum prosperity and all these things of leaping, we forget that there's a launch pad, there's a launching point, right? So I really wanted to be, I'm not exactly where I want to be just yet, right? Like I have big dreams, I have a big vision, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm aiming for, but I don't let myself get so lost and wrapped up in the future that I'm never present in the now. And I think that's the fundamental piece of what's missing in terms of like manifestation, right? We see all this stuff all the time, and it's usually born from this place of, I'm not happy with my life now. So I need to have new things. I desire more because what I have now is not good. And that completely divorces our focus from the real problem, which is I'm powerless in my life. And that's what I'm really upset about. That's what I'm really angry about. I feel like no matter what I do, you know, my upcoming program, Rain, we're talking toxic self archetypes. Actually, the doors are open now, so it's not even upcoming anymore, but we're talking toxic self archetypes. And one of the identities in that program is called the martyr, right? So no matter what I do, I'm always wrong. The victim, nobody loves me. I'm always rejected. Nobody sees me. I keep putting myself out there to no avail. And so these emotions, our perception on reality, when we talk like quantum realm, what is the quantum realm? I call it the quantum realm because I literally imagine it as a place where we pull out potential realities. But at the end of the day, if we want to talk science and some fun stuff, like we all have quantum fields, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's our electromagnetic field. It's what we're literally like attracting. And what we're attracting, and this is so butchered, I'm not a science person, but I love this shit. So I talk about it in a very geeky way, but but what we're attracting is what we're perceiving of our reality. So if we want more, in other words, like this was my conundrum. I'm like, okay, I want to feel super satisfied in my life. I want to feel super successful. I want to feel juiced up and loved up and tapped in and turned on and high in the most natural way possible. Yeah. I want to feel like I'm walking on cloud nine. I want to feel like 1 in a million. That's like a motto, like a credo in my brain. If that's the way that I want to feel, why do I have to wait for it? Right? Why, like, if we're talking manifesting, why does it always feel like it's something that's ahead of me, that's not quite in front of me, that's not like it's forever out of my reach? What if I'm that now? What if I love my now? What if I fall in love with time and use time, not even use time, but enchant time as an ally, a lover? You can even think of time as a lover instead of my enemy and my adversary, where I get my back up and I get defensive and I get upset and I get really locked into like my black hole of emotions and negativity around my present reality, not realizing that that's what's attracting all the shit I don't want coming in from the future. And that's that's what has me fixating on the bullshit from the past. So I got really obsessed by, I think this has always been me though. Like I'm always obsessed by the games we play with ourselves and how we shoot ourselves, for lack of a better word, like how we just fuck ourselves over, but also how we're constantly forgetting that even when we fuck ourselves over, those are teaching points. That's like the learning curve. That's the best parts. That's the juiciest stuff, because no one's going to have the wisdom that you have quite the way that you have, right? Like the golden nuggets that you've been able to mine from some of the cave-ins in your life, no one else is going to have. So that's beautiful too. So in other words, I was like, this life feels really beautiful. I want as much pleasure from it as possible, but I also want to feel strong and brave and kind and compassionate when it all goes wrong as well. And I don't want to use manifesting or what's coming to me in the future, what I know is coming to me as in the future, as a crutch or an excuse to stop being present in the now, to get mad at the now, to distance myself from the people around me. You know, we were talking behind the scenes about like the fact that I have this love program. The reason that was important to me is because I don't want to be part of perpetuating the message that success means that you don't have people who love you. And success means that you don't get to have it all, right? Like something has to give in order for you to have multi-millions, have, you know, the kind of like reputation that you desire where people just know you and they're like, I want to work with her, whatever it is. I want it all. I want a loving family. I want amazing friends. I want amazing business relationships. You know, I have a relationship with you now. It feels effortless. It feels at ease because I'm not putting you on a hierarchy or a pedestal. I don't present so that you treat me in the same way. We're just two people having a conversation. And then magic is about to like unfold. But if I had an expectation and I walked in here with a chip on my shoulder, we would be manifesting something very different. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I got really passionate about it.
No, I think,
good question.
Yeah, I think that it's great. And it kind of like already like segued into like the other questions of like, what do you do? What are you passionate about? Like, what are you helping other people with? And like, you kind of touched on like those main points of like the way that we're currently seeing things and the way that we're taught to view like manifestation or receiving or success and any like relationships or anything in society. It's like, you're just like, no, that's not it. Like we're tapping into like this higher, like quantum kind of like, we're going straight to the, we're going right to the energy. We're not focusing on like what other people are saying, what things that have been going down. Right. Like on this podcast, we talk a lot about like not listening to new age spirituality. And I feel like there's a lot of limitations and a lot of that stuff. So that's why I'd be interested to know, like, so what like, I guess, what barriers do you want to break down and like share with people? Or like, what would you recommend for people who are like, I see this life for myself. I always dream of this life for myself. I want to like be that, like how you're talking about, like, I just tapped into my timeline and I created it. And I'm hearing people who are like, I want this. How do you do this?
Well, I think, okay, so the biggest thing, first of all, I highly recommend y'all all check out Prophecy, the Art of Divine Timing. That's a masterclass that I'm doing. I'm transitioning my one-to-one portal where I do this in depth and moving that into a masterclass space so everybody can just get in on this goodness. But essentially, when I'm going into a prophecy session, when I'm talking about prophesizing, which is so much deeper than affirmations and writing things down on pieces of paper, and it's even, I think it's what it really comes down to for me, what made this offer so special and kind of launched me into this space where I'm now talking to you and people want to know more about what I do. Prophecy was the start of it all. And it's the foundation of a lot of what I talk about, because it's divine timing, divine timeline. The thing with prophecy is it's more than an affirmation. It's a commitment to the knowing that absolute abundance and pleasure is yours. And that you don't have to know the exact face of it or the parameters or the structure of it. You don't have to get super specific with it if you don't want to. But whatever it is that you want, and not necessarily even to gain, to feel, right? I had a client tell me that she just wanted to trust that she wasn't a fraud, that this wasn't all just some kind of hoax or something that she'd manipulated, right? Trusting that your worth is so much deeper than something some old king, priest, emperor laid down on you and was like, hey, divine right, I'm going to rule the world. I'm more worthy to rule everyone. You are not. Spoiler alert, because God chose me. We're moving past that paradigm, I think. I think it really comes down to committing to your desires. So how do you commit to your desires? There's a reason why prophecy sessions took 2 hours, because it was such a potent, heavy question in a lot of ways. It starts with, first and foremost, looking at, I was actually talking about this in my membership space today, our low energy triad, I call it. So it's guilt, disappointment, shame. What are the sources of those things for you? Because oftentimes when I talk about desire, you either have a really intense positive reaction or a really intense negative reaction. Because sometimes desires feel great, and then other times desires feel big and scary. And you're like, ugh, and it feels like shit in your body, and your nervous system reacts to it. And you're not really in a place where you're ready to align with it because you don't feel physically motivated, let alone mentally and emotionally motivated to even conceptualize what it would be like to have your dream life, we'll call it, right? So it comes down to really looking at, I've made a lot of low energy choices, right? Things that I might regret, things that I might be ashamed of, things that I still kind of hold over myself when I fail or fuck up or make mistakes. What is the source of that? How far back does this go? And I actually revealed this in my membership space today. For me, what I realized the biggest source, because I went through this whole like death rebirth situation right on the cusp of this new season, right on the cusp of this program, it was the perfect way to energetically set the table for this new program and everything I was walking into. Because I started to feel like my power was collapsing. I started to feel like what I was prophesizing for myself, what I had been prophesizing since the start of this like new phase in my life and new business phase, wasn't going to happen. I started to get in my head. I was doubting, was overthinking, a lot of low energy choices, guilt, shame, and disappointment. And so for me, the source of that really came from as far back as I can remember, knowing that like my parents had me very young, right? So they're very, very young parents, had me in like 1920 situation. And it really derailed their lives, having children young. And I was the first, and I was not a planned pregnancy. So knowing that I was the source of burden for most of my mom's life, who was a single mom, right? And having it communicated to me, like, no matter what she means about it now or what she might have meant or whatever, mistakes were made, things were said, and it has been communicated to me before that I have either been a burden or life would be different if you weren't around, sort of thing. Or I picked that up, I intuited that. whatever it was. We don't want to gaslight our intuition. I know I felt that as well coming from her. And just feeling that all my life, like I was a mistake. Like I wasn't supposed to be here. Right. I'm a mistake. I wasn't supposed to be born. And anytime I fuck up, anytime I make a mistake, anytime things are not going my way, it's because I wasn't actually supposed to be here. It's a really dark source of shame, but you know this. You do shadow work, I'm sure, as well. And you know how dark and deep it can go. And so when I realized that that was the source of my shame, the practice then became, is compromising my alignment with my desires worth wallowing in this fear right now, first of all? And second of all, can I show myself compassion because of whatever choices I made from this place of shame, this deep source of shame? And thirdly, can I show compassion to my mom, who may or may not have communicated, intimated, or let on that that was the way that she was feeling? Because we are all doing our best all the time. And can I accept that whether or not it felt like a surprise or mistake or whatever, that I chose to be here, right? I choose every single day, regardless of your beliefs about what goes on beyond the veil. I personally believe that we choose to manifest as humans, right? We may not know where our destinies are going to take us. We may not know, because we get to choose that along the way. But the fact is, I could have said adios. I could have said adios to this whole situation at any point, but I didn't. I still choose to be here. So if I'm going to continue to choose to be here, why am I going to get mad at my reality? Why am I going to get mad at the world as though they're the problem, as though I'm powerless, as though I don't have a choice here? I do have a choice. I'm choosing to be here right now. I'm choosing to look at you. I'm choosing to be in this podcast. I'm choosing to show up on my Instagram. I'm choosing to run a business. Like, it's a whole thing. So really discovering the source of your shame is so powerful, because it helps you see, first of all, how the shame, even if it has led to regrets and bad decisions, it has served you. It has meant something. It has helped you create something. It's giving you a new awareness. There's gold in that, right? And then once we go through the shame, it's about uncovering your fears as well. Like, what are your fears if you were to actually have what you desire? And systematically going in, this is what I would do during a prophecy session, systematically going in and converting those thoughts, transforming them. Like, is that the actual truth? Or is that just the narrative you've built up in your mind based on the play, the drama that you want to be a part of because it's comfortable? It feels good in your body when you're used to stress and trauma and anxiety and anguish to create more of that. The anomaly is actually stepping outside of that. And even in a world, I was saying this in my membership call today as well, like even in a world like this one, where we are literally fed constantly low level frequencies of unworthiness all the time. You should look this way. You should show up this way. You should work this way. You should have this much money in your bank account. You should have this kind of partner. You should have this kind of child. You should have this, your whole lifestyle has been written by society, right? And you're talking about like, this is doing things differently, right? Not following the status quo. That's huge. It's huge to let go of the fear of that, of being the person who's like, that's not for me. I want more. I want something different. And so exploring your source of shame, exploring those fears, we would do that during a prophecy session. So I would say, if you want to prophesize something, if you want to commit to a big, bold desire, if you want to quantum leap, if you want all of those things, we've got to start there. You can't ignore those things. And you've got to make that a part of your, I don't even want to use the word arsenal. I would say so much as we can go spell book. This is witchy and weird, right? So you can make that part of your grimoire. You can make that part of your story. You can make that part of your empowerment. And then from there, we go into what you desire. What do you want? How does it feel? Like, once we take out the fear, once we take away the shame, how does it feel to want what you want? What is it about your desires that makes you so excited to show up for them, to even contemplate them, right? To even start to fantasize about them? What is it about them? Because it's not even the things themselves, right? It's not the money in the bank account. It's not the new car. It's the feeling that you're going to have in your body. That's a feminine energetic right there. How is it going to feel in your body when you have this experience? Not when you jump into this outcome or finally gain that result. It's the experience that you're excited about. And from there, I'm able to, because it's part of my potency, part of my magic, I'm able to take apart from that what you're receiving. I'm able to extract your receiving frequency from what you tell me. So essentially, the way I view it, there's different sensations, words, feelings in your body that create your unique receiving frequency. And so for me personally, wonder, power, ease, that's how I get into my receiving mode. That's how I start to like create the things that are on its way to me that I've already caught glimpses of, because psychic, hello, we're seeing ahead of future timelines, getting impressions, and we all have this ability. Anytime we want something so deeply, it's because we've got the synchronicity to prove it. We've seen it show up so many times. And so I'm able to extract your receiving frequency. So I would say, figure out what your receiving frequency is. What is it that makes you so lit up? What puts you in the receiving vibe? And then from there, based on what I have seen in terms of your patterns, and so you can do this too when you journal, go in, looking at the shame, looking at the fear. What are the patterns? How do I react to these things? How do I feel when I'm triggered by something or activated by something? What's my vibe in those situations? How do I treat myself? How do I treat other people? When you start to see some of the patterns of the ways that you react, you can start to figure out what your weaknesses are, for lack of a better term. These are the areas that I can improve, right? So basically what we do is, and what you can do is find what your source of shame is. Really explore those fears objectively, gently, lovingly. Get in there and figure out what your receiving frequency is. Pull the patterns, right, that you've witnessed in your life, the things that actually are the things that need to change in order for you to have more of what you want. Because if you don't change those patterns, if you don't change those inherent reactions or quote unquote bad habits, you're just going to continue creating the past. You're not going to be in any way, shape, or form aligning with the future.
Right.
And then from there, we make a statement, and it's profound of, and honestly, what I would do at the end of a prophecy session is I would send you something that sounds like very oracle like, where it's like, once you do X, Y, Z, you will release this and receive this. And it comes through me, and it's this incredible transmission. So you get to have fun with it. For those who are listening to this and want to do this at home, you get to have fun with it. Channel something divine, right? You're not just this ordinary human flesh bag, right? You are this like divine, enchanting, loving, beloved being. And you've got to treat yourself like that. It's true. So you write your future, not in terms of I wish, or I hope, or I want. We don't use frilly, fragile words like that. We go in and we're like, you're going to have X, Y, Z. And there's something that happens, a kind of magic that comes over the person when we do this, because they've already gone through the darkest part of the journey, right? And then we pulled out all of the magic of that darkness. And then we've sunken into what's coming. And it's like, holy shit, I'm capable of having that. I'm capable of creating that. My God. So you believe it when I'm saying these like divine, I'm giving you this divine transmission. The belief is there because you've undergone this incredible journey. And so here we are. So in other words, let yourself journey, right? Let yourself journey through the shame, the fear, explore your desires. Be very specific, not necessarily in the things that you're going to have or who's going to show up, so much as what you are truly open to receiving as an essence, right? As like a vibe, as a non-negotiable, as a standard, right? We're playing bigger than just like, I'm going to have fucking millions by the time I'm 30. So what happens after you're 30, right? What happens once you're 31? What are you going to do then? That's why prophecy is so potent and so different. And I think that's what makes my work so attractive. I don't know if I've ever been able to explain it like that. So thank you for giving me the space to just like vibe, because I was like, that's beautiful. I can't wait to listen to that back.
I love that. Yeah, I think that happens to me all the time. You're just like, spirit is like speaking through you, and you're like, oh crap, like what? That was
yeah, that was some dope like Delish.
Yeah, I love that because it's like I do agree. I think a lot of people when we're thinking of manifestation, we're thinking of short term. We're thinking of this like how you're saying, I'm not feeling empowered right now. I'm not feeling happy. I'm not feeling loved, whatever it is. And I
Yep.
just want to get out of that feeling as quickly as possible. How can I quickly escape this feeling? And like we talk about this,
Beautifully
like
said.
doing the shadow work, like and what you're saying, like really address those fears, really sink into them and feel them and give them that space. And then once you're like out of that, feel into like, what do I actually want? What can I actually feel and see for myself receiving in my whole life? Not just like right in the next 3 months, I want to have a different apartment. It's like, where are you going to be for your whole entire life? Like that's awesome. I like that.
Yeah, like why can't we just expect that not only will I have the apartment, but I essentially want to always know and have and receive an incredible place to live that takes my breath away, that makes me feel amazing. I don't care what chapter of my life I'm in, I'm always going to have that. That level of potency, that level of confidence, and that knowing, it's irreplaceable. It's attached to your power. And that's the thing. I think of like, even in moments like this, ordinarily in the past, I would be nervous to do something like this, believe it or not. I'm not, I'm a pretty charismatic person. I'm an ambivert. And so I do like need my moments of introvertedness and all this stuff, but I work with around people and with people and talk with people really, really well. But in situations like this, where it would be spotlighted on me and really focused on like what my magic is, at another point in time, I would have been nervous about something like this. But what is so powerful about the evolution I've undergone and what I'm bringing to all of my clients and to this world, quite frankly, is that your power ends up being this non-negotiable asset. Like it's always there. So before this podcast, I was like, I don't even need to know what I'm bringing to the table. I don't need to know what I'm speaking on. I asked you no questions. I just went along. I was like, invitation, correct. Felt it in my body. Wonderful. We are good to go. I'm just going to let her lead. I'm going to let them lead. I'm sorry. I'm going to let them lead and do their thing. And then I'm going to trust my flow and I'm going to trust my magic because I'm fucking powerful. How do I know that I'm powerful? Well, I make high energy choices whenever I'm given the opportunity. And so because of that, I can trust my direction. I can trust where I'm going. I can trust myself to navigate. I think it's really difficult for people to think of them sometimes as strong. Like I was a reformed people pleaser, believe it or not. And like, you know, really focused on being nice all the time and just not wanting to be abandoned or rejected or any of those things. And I really admired people, especially women for me, and like women of color, especially, who could stand on and stand for what they believe in and loudly in their spaces. You know, I'm Latin and I've grown up with really fierce Latinas in my life, but I've never actually considered myself one. And the irony is a lot of people would see that strength in me or that power in me and just assume everything was good and everything was okay. But I had a distorted view of myself. And so when I used to shy away from words like power, but then it was something I really wanted. Like it's something so juicy and wonderful and sexy about being that powerful person. But immediately, I think the way we're conditioned nowadays is like when you hear power, you're like badass. We've got to be a badass. We've got to be like in the leather jacket and have the dark makeup. And when you look at someone like me, I don't even think that you necessarily assume that we would do something like shadow work or give it that kind of context inside of a session, because I'm very like romantic and loving and happy. But that's kind of the beautiful flip side of all of that, is like where there's gentleness, there's also ferocity, right? And so I think part of this journey for me has been really about tapping into and owning and loving on that fierceness. It's tempered by kindness, but it's okay for me to be radically seen, right? And to speak on the things that I care about and not have all the answers, not place myself in a hierarchy in order to like justify this is right, my perspective is right, you can't question me, to avoid being challenged. That's not what I'm here for. But still being able to express myself authentically without holding back, that power, when you have that, when you know that, when you tap into that, of course it becomes easy to prophesize, to manifest, to enjoy what you're manifesting. Manifestation is the process, right? And then we often forget that. It's so easy to enjoy that process because within that process, you know, you're making high energy, powerful choices and you're like, damn, good. And then when the actualization happens, when the thing shows up and you're like, oh my God, or the experience or whatever it was, it's like, yeah, duh. It's like almost like a logical thing. Like, yeah, because it's a reflection of me and where I'm at. So as long as I've got this power, which means I don't need to be rich right now, doesn't mean I have to be in the ideal living situation right now. It doesn't mean that I have to have 1 million clients right now. It doesn't mean that my business has to look outwardly a certain way at any point. Where I'm at right now is perfect because I'm powerful. And then whatever comes next, yeah, because I'm powerful. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, do you get where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
So it feels really magical.
Yeah. And I want to draw attention. So 2 things came up when you were talking for me. So
yes, you're such a good interviewer, by the way. I love this.
One thing that you talked about like before and how you always admired certain people for certain things, but you were scared of that. I think that can also be a piece that people can start to think about if you're like, I'm not sure what I want my life to look like, what my like zone of genius is, what, you know, all of that is for me. Like, what are my desires? Like, what are people that you love, things that you're drawn to, stuff that like, you're like, oh, I really wish I was like this person. And like you were saying, like people saw you as powerful, but you never felt that.
Yeah.
And when you start to look at even those types of patterns in your life, and then you'll see like, oh, I actually am really drawn to people who are powerful because I know deep down that I'm powerful and I'm not allowing myself to like express that. So that's something that people, I feel like, could look at if they're like, what, I'm not sure yet, like where am I going with this? And then the other thing that I think is really important is how you're saying like making sure we're taking like empowered actions and we're doing like high vibration things. That really feels like potent because it's sometimes I feel like we set like, okay, I want to manifest this, I want this, and then like you said, we revert back to this like old thing, and maybe we don't think it's related because, oh, that's not the choice that I just made, has nothing to do with my manifestation, so it's okay if I do that. And it's like, no, we need to consistently be taking that like high vibration action. And I that really came through clear when you were speaking. I want to remind people of that. Like, we always talk about like empowerment is a huge thing for me too, and like my business and the podcast. It's like, where in every single aspect of your life can you be making those empowered decisions, taking empowered action, asking yourself empowered questions, and like that's going to be what's going to lead you to like the highest vibration for whatever it is that you're trying to attain or be or emanate. So I think that is something like, even if you're maybe scared to do the other stuff that we're talking about, because that stuff can be scary, which is why like you're here to work with people and you know, through it. That can be something that you can start to do. Like, okay, how can I feel empowered? What's like one decision or thing that I can do that makes me feel empowered today, that makes me feel, like you said, like juicy or lit up or loved, or whatever it is. So that's like a huge, I think that that's a huge, like even just adopting that as like a lifestyle is gonna
it takes you far. It takes you beyond any trend. And I want to add to that because I was talking about this in my membership space today. It's like really fresh for me, actually. So I was talking about this because within that low energy triad I mentioned, right? Guilt, shame, and disappointment. It can be really easy to just keep pinging between the 3 points, right? So you're just like in this triangular loop, if you will. And it's like, how do you make a high energy choice, for example, when you're like overthinking, or you might be avoidant or anxious or what have you? How do you make the high energy choice in that situation? How do you gain perspective? How do you do the thing? Neutrality is such a beautiful thing, y'all. Neutrality is such a beautiful thing. And sometimes to get into that neutral state, it can just simply be stepping out of the binary construct that we're like taught. Essentially, good is good and bad is bad, right? You know, we're learning now more than ever. I mean, honestly, thanks to the fluidity of gender, I would credit, to be honest. We're learning that there's so many other options. There's so many other choices. There's so many different ways to be a man or woman, or none of the above, or all of the above, right? So similarly, there's not good or bad or right or wrong the way that our minds would like to think. So when you're in that low energy triad where you're like guilt, shame, disappointment, and it's this loop that I keep mentioning, it can be really easy to be like, I did a bad thing, or I did a good thing for me. And one gets praised and the other one gets shamed even more. Neutrality. Asking a question that breaks that mold, where it's not like, did I just do a bad thing or did I just do a good thing? It's like, where do I grow from here? What's the next thing? What am I learning? It's a question that lives outside of that binary. Any question that lives outside of that binary, I actually call it a disrupting question, because it disrupts that cascade into negativity where there's like a black hole at the bottom, right? We don't want to go there. And like I said, we don't need rock bottom. It's not necessary or required to get to the next level ever. Sometimes we end up stumbling into them, not on purpose, but it happens. Knowing how to navigate them, yes, is important. But honestly, when you have power, you can navigate anything. And you realize that rock bottom is just a freaking crack in the sidewalk rather than this like gigantic precipice. But to my point of like neutrality is so key, because when you can't do anything or say anything or be anything, you're like, I don't know who I'm becoming, and I don't know how to feel any different, and I don't know how to see this any other way. Whatever you try to manifest from that place, even when you try to manifest support from that place, it's going to be out of a desperate needing energy where like, I need to break this cycle. I need someone to help me get out of this negative loop. You've got to get yourself out of the negative loop. And the only way that you're going to be able to get yourself out of that negative loop is to find that neutral space. And then from there, it's like that disrupting question starts to break apart the density of all that toxicity that you might be experiencing. And then you can start to make a more lucid, brave, different, exciting, juicy, whatever choice, abundant choice, but not before, right? Like I think that's the thing we forget. It's like, again, in that binary system, it's like low to high, but what happens in between?
Yeah.
Right. Well, what happens in between, there's like a limbo, a neutral space, and it's okay to be there. Like I tell my clients all the time, if you don't feel aligned with it now, you're aligning with it, right? It's not that you're never aligned or you're never going to align with it. It's either you're aligning or you're aligned. You'll know you're aligned because you'll know. There's really no other way to say it. You'll know because you'll know. But when you don't know and you're confused and you're muddled and you're feeling negative about your situation, or you just don't know what the next step is to make, you're aligning. So let yourself align, right? Let yourself start to experience where you're at, navigate, move, shift, flow, etc.
Yeah. I love that. Cause like for me, I help a lot of people with like deep trauma, and that's like creating safety in your body. And that was the thing that I realized
amazing
is like, people are just saying like, how can I feel safe in my body? It's like, if I don't feel like I have no safety in my body, like feeling safe in my body, like getting from one to the other, that binary is too much. It's overwhelming. It's like, that triggers me to even like think of feeling safe. So like,
exactly.
So
like you couldn't have said it better.
Right. Like it makes it even worse. So it's like, how can I feel safer? What is a step that can make me get into that direction? Or like you said, how can I even feel neutral in my body where it's not safe, it's not unsafe, but it's like getting to that space. So I think that that's also, I like that you brought that up, because it is about like the steps. Like some people, like you said, can like shift from here all the way over to there really quickly. And that's awesome. But sometimes it's like, okay, I just need to make some forward action, do something that's getting me there. Because like you said, if that process of aligning, it's like, then I just know that I'm still getting there. And it's not like, oh, I haven't had the immediate gratification and I'm sad, so I failed. I know that I'm getting there.
Well, I think, you know what though, in saying, I love that you said that, because it makes it so much more inclusive, right? It's not like you have to be a certain kind of person in order to have the life that you want. I think that's the gripe that a lot of people have. Like in the coaching industry, you'll see someone talk about like, you just got to get into the vibe or whatever. And there's a lot of people who are in the middle of that, right? In the middle of that spectrum. They're not so far on either side, who are like, but what if I don't know how? Or what if I don't know what to do next? Or what if, and are in this like overthinking, anxious, avoidant, or scared, or whatever it is, can't get into it, can't feel it in their body, whatever it is. And so I can understand their frustration, because it means okay, am I left out of the conversation then? If I can't get into the vibe, if I can't get to this high energy place and space, then I'm just a lost cause. And what I'm saying with my work and my brand and all the things is I highly respect and expect all of my clients to show up powerfully as often as they can. And when they can't, to communicate that they can't. To communicate and use their voice, or to give themselves space until they can express where they're at. That being said, nowhere in there do I think that you have to be the superhuman who essentially has it together all the fucking time. And it's just this easy, simple 1, 2, 3 switch, because triggers are a real thing. You know, I'm someone who has suffered a lot of trauma in my life. I still get really in my head if someone raises their voice at me. It's really hard for me sometimes to remember I'm a powerful being when there's someone screaming at me, because it reminds me of my childhood. And so that's a real fucking thing. That's something that we can't forget in all of this. You can be a magnetic, amazing, powerful, juicy, abundant person, but will that mean that you never navigate fear? Absolutely not. Will that mean that you won't be challenged? No. But what it does mean is that you have a choice to make. And sometimes the only choice to make is that neutral space, is that neutrality of like, I'm not going left or right. I'm not going to push myself into that binary structure of like good, bad, left, right, high, low. I'm just going to let myself coast and not make it mean anything about where I'm going, who I'm becoming, what's possible for me. I'm just cooling my jets, resting, relaxing, being at peace, waiting for that clarity to come, inviting that clarity to come, meditating, getting centered, staying silent, instead of vocalizing when there's that anxiety and confusion or whatever. No one can hear you anyway, right? Like no one is going to be able to absorb your message because it's so muddled anyway. So don't force yourself. Make a decision that puts you in that neutral space so you can heal, gather your resources, whatever you need to do, and then break that loop, like I was saying, of guilt, shame, disappointment, and do something completely meaningless, right? Exist in a meaningless way, if you will, like just nothing. I can't tell you how many times that's been so useful for me, where I would just essentially like sit in my bed wrapped up in like a bunch of blankets and just live through what is passing through me, instead of trying to be like this boss bitch person who's like, oh, gonna get it done or whatever it is. My vision for myself, prophecy, all of these things does not change, is not contingent on what I'm going through. This will always fluctuate. Me as a human will always fluctuate. Energy and motion, energy is temporary anyway. Energy can be invested in all kinds of places. You can pull it back, take it, give it, whatever. Your power is constant. But when you're like this and you got the constant power, but you're like this and you look, everything's chaotic. Are you focusing on this? No, you're like, everything's chaotic. So this has to slow down and then you get back to this. And that's valid and good and still juicy and still fucking exciting and still amazing and still powerful and strong and courageous and all the things, unless you make it mean something else. And then we got to start the process all over again.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's really important to look at, like you said, the big picture, the long term, because if like you said, I need to take those few days or whatever it is to process whatever is going through me. And if I'm thinking more short term for manifestation, I'm thinking, oh no, this one day is worth so much and I'm losing so much by not showing up for this one day and
exactly.
But if you're thinking like long term, I know this is for me because I'm standing my power around this 1 or 2 days is actually part of the process and it's going to be
yes. I couldn't be more happy right now. That's exactly it. It's part of the process. It's the journeying that's so exciting. You know, like when you're planning a vacation, if you're just focused on what's going to happen when you get there, right? You're just focused on what's happening when you get there, but you're trying to control how good it's going to be or where you're going to go and all these things. you're not actually focusing on what it's like to even be journeying in the destination, because there's levels of that too. Like you can book the stay at the resort, let's say somewhere, but what activities are you going to do? Who are you going to meet? Like there's all these little things that can happen, all this magic and potential waiting for you, even at the destination. But then also, what about the journey there? The plane ride, the car, the taxi driver, so many, I have the most incredible memories and stories from literally like being on a plane or on a taxi to go somewhere exciting, and that makes it just as exciting. Sometimes it's even more exciting than what actually happened when I got there. And that is what I want for my life, because even though I know like destination wise this is coming for me or this is going to happen for me, it's not going to mean anything. It's going to like fade out and blur past if everything to get there was meaningless. Do you know what I'm saying? So I want it all to mean something that I chose, that I'm intentional about, and I'm not letting my emotions write the script. But I want it to mean something that moves me, that excites me. My handle, for example, the most extraordinary woman, it's not just like a catch-all or an eye-catching thing that makes you stop in your tracks. I know it is. I know I get asked about it a lot, but it's actually part of like my legacy. I made a promise to myself that I'm going to be the most extraordinary woman I know. That's where that comes from. And so it means something bigger than just my Instagram handle. And when I remember that, it's like, I really don't care what goes on Instagram. And that was just like a reflection of my choice. Like I'm stepping into something so big. It doesn't matter what happens in the algorithm. It doesn't matter what's happening with someone's friends or in the industry or, you know, a trend or a news thing that pops up. None of that matters. Like I know what I'm playing for, right? Like I know what game I'm playing, and it's not even about playing to win. It's about playing to enjoy the game, right? Like I'm playing to enjoy the game. I'm not playing to win. I know I'm going to win. That's irrelevant. That's boring. In a way, like I have to live the game. I have to be excited for every level of the game. That's just that's what I want to communicate. You asked me in the beginning, like, what barriers am I hoping to dissolve? What am I hoping to bring to the people? It's that feeling of like, this game is fucking amazing. I don't care if I started at the shittiest place at level 0. As I keep escalating and going through this game, it just gets better and better and better and better. And yeah, I'm winning to get to every level, but that's not even the best part, right? It's one of them, but it's not the best part.
Yeah. Yeah, that I read this psychology book, and it basically talks about this principle about like people who have like a really intense like medical thing happen to them, their quality of life decreases, but then over time it goes back to the same level. And they did a study with people who won the lottery. People who won the lottery, they get really intense, their quality of life greatly increases, and then it goes back to the same level where they were at before they won the lottery. And so that's what it's kind of like reminding me of, that it's like no matter what state you're at in life, where it's like if you become paraplegic or if you win the lottery, you're always going to maintain that status of your quality of life. So that's what I think, like when you're talking about, it's like don't worry about the destination, don't worry about the winning. It's like that stuff happened to them, that was like an end goal thing for them, or you know, like a big like dramatic thing, but then it always goes back. So just focusing on like having the most fun, feeling the most joy, like doing that within the process, that's what's going to elevate your quality of life, not like winning the lottery and then having all the money, because then you still have the same quality of life, you just have more money.
Well, here's my thing. Well, first of all, I love that you shared that, because that is actually such a great way to like add to this conversation. I love that fucking so much, because who are you when you win the lottery? Right? Like, are you in that desperate, needing, lacking, scarcity, divorce place that we were talking about? Or are you someone who's really proud of the life that they live and who looks at the winning of the lottery as like, not even just, you know, something to be entitled for? Because when I say, you know, of course, duh, it's boring and all those things, I don't want to knock the fact that it happened, right? This great, amazing thing that happens to you. But what is it in the name of, right? What does it mean? Because if it means I'm going to suddenly be a better person by winning the lottery, if it means all my problems are going to go away when I win the lottery, that's once again attributing your power to something circumstantial. Instead of going, I'm powerful and this is what I was able to create, what I was able to pull in. I'm so grateful, first of all. Second of all, and third of all, what is this in the name of? What am I going to do with it? What could I play with? Who might I become? I'm becoming the person who won the lottery. Okay, what does that mean? How can I get really intentional about what that means and be really conscious about what that means? What can I do with this? Where could I go? Who could I help? What, there's so much. It's like an expander, right? Winning the lottery instead of something that retracts you and brings you back into your shell, makes you continually overthink. Because once you get that money, you could be that person who's always overthinking, who's always worried about whose toes they're stepping on, who's always worried about the bad thing that's going to come around the corner. And that person is the one that's been empowered by the money, but except the money isn't empowering. It just feels like another burden or another thing to be accountable for. Then what was the point, right? Like,
yeah, that's why we get, like, we see those examples of like people who quote unquote don't have a lot or have nothing, but they're so happy with their life. And then there's like people who are billionaires in their life. My life sucks. Everybody hates me. I'm alone. All this stuff. And it's like, it's a part of the capitalist lie that we're taught. But I love that you're like here saying like, no, we're working to create that for you, like feeling happy for yourself, loving the journey, like being open to these like surprises and miracles and everything.
Because then money becomes the bow on top. It becomes the icing. It's the amplifier of who you really are instead of the identifier of who you are. And I think that's a really key distinction. It's like money as an identifier is really hollow and it doesn't last long. It's going to be a shallow thing that's not going to really help you. So if you think that, you know, making all the money in the business, for example, is finally going to make you someone or make you someone special, you've completely ignored the fact that you've been special all along. And that you've done yourself a disservice by never stopping to figure out what your it factor even was. You let the money be the thing that was going to be the it factor that made people want to work with you or buy from you or whatever, or support you or love you, right? And so that's a very different thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I don't hate money. Like money and I have had such like a rocky relationship throughout my life. My mom has a very scarcity driven mindset. We've been working on it and it's been really wonderful seeing her manifest incredible things. But I grew up in that space. I'm also Latin. I've lived in redlined areas. Money has been a really hot button touchy subject, but I don't hate money. I don't see it as the root of all evil. I don't see it as something good or bad. I don't even see it as the motor in a capitalist society. I just think of it as an energy. And it's an energy that is constantly refilling itself, because whether we continue to exchange paper, we exchange resources or whatever it is, it's always going to be a present reality, right? We're always going to be exchanging something for something else. So when you look at it as, again, outside of the binary structure of good or bad or right or wrong, you're like, money is just an energy. And it's an energy that can unlock a lot of incredible opportunities. Why not play there? Why not receive it? Why not have it? Why not continue to exchange it? It's not the problem, because our power doesn't lie with money. Our power is our power. And oftentimes people pay you because you're powerful. Money is attracted to that power. Money is attracted to that magnetism, that confidence, that knowing, that certainty, right? Money is attracted to your vision. Money's not attracted to like how much you need it and how much you wish you had it for that bill that's coming tomorrow, whatever it is. If that were true, we wouldn't have poverty in the world, right? If that's how money worked. But it's not like that. And so when you start to look at it as like this expander and this amplifier, again, rather than an identifier, suddenly you are the one with the power and with the money. And in your power, you can choose to do something really special with the money. And if you're the kind of person who wants to give back to the world and enhance the world and see the world flourish, you get to do that with money. But making an adversary of money is counterproductive and counterintuitive and makes no damn sense. Quite frankly, you know? Oh, we could talk about that all day long too. This is good stuff. I'm loving this conversation.
Yeah. So do you have any last like thing that you wanted to share, or piece of advice or anything for anyone listening?
I would say, so I really deeply believe that kindness is honesty wrapped in respect, right? And so I think it's really important to be honest with ourselves and be honest with other people, but do it like we give a shit, right? About the other people and about ourselves. And I think it's okay to be at a point where you're like, I'm not satisfied by what's happening in my life or what I'm getting or who's loving me or not loving me, who may or may not be rejecting me. I feel abandoned. I feel whatever I'm feeling. the kindness factor for me is so important. The compassion factor is so important for me, because I don't want to demonize or alienate myself ever, even when I'm at a point where I can't see the good of something. And so what I really want to see more from people, and hopefully the people listening and watching this podcast, or however this is going to show up for them, is to show more kindness to themselves and remove themselves from that hierarchy that I keep alluding to and throughout this conversation, to make it our mission to step more into compassion rather than comprehension. Right? I don't need to understand how it all works. I don't need to understand why you do the things that you do. I'm going to assume that you have a good reason for it. And if you don't, that's not even my problem. The fact that you're hurting is. The fact that you're feeling lost is. The fact that you don't know what to do or what your next steps are is. Right? And so I would rather we show a whole hell of a lot more compassion, kindness to ourselves, and therefore, by extension, irrevocably to each other. I think a lot of magic, a lot of quantum potential and prosperity can emerge from that kind of perspective, rather than focusing on how we get it all to work or how we control people or manipulate people into giving us what we want. It's like, dude, just chill. Like, I can't even, that's like the essence of it all. It's like, chill out, be kind, show some compassion, pretend, because it's often true. So you don't even need to pretend, but have the outlook or the perspective that everybody has a story that would break your heart. I heard that one time in my life and I never forgot it. When you have that perspective, you naturally become a lot more gentle with people. And it doesn't mean that you relinquish your boundaries or people stop respecting you just because you end up wearing your heart on your sleeve. It just means that you're a lot bolder and a lot stronger than most people, and that's inspiring. And inspiring in the way of like, I don't need to have people, when I think of myself, like I'm this beacon of light, and people are, I could either see it as people are scrabbling up my shores trying to get to my lighthouse and trying to steal my light, or I can look at it as like they see that light in this like vast ocean of craziness, chaos, darkness, and they are inspired and motivated and strengthened and empowered to go light their own, right? They're not trying to feast on mine and steal mine. And I think when you have that perspective, largely because you found your power, you remembered what your power really is, and that you are beloved and you are loved, and connection is how you express it. Intimacy, relationships, partnering with divine energies, with your timeline, with time itself, becomes so much more simple and fluid and effortless and graceful and enjoyable and delicious and all the words, right? So that's my little parting message, is like, remember kindness, compassion, remember your strength. Don't be afraid of having your boundaries crossed or having bad things happen to you all the time. That kind of negative perspective is just going to create more of the same. And we are playing at a different level now. We are seeing a new paradigm. We are being awakened and shown the way by so many different incredible people. I'd like to think of myself as one of them, and you obviously as one of them. So let's just be in that space and not so focus so hard on what's not right or not working, or who's not right and not working for us. Everything is serving you. Everything. I promise.
I love that. And where can we find you? Where can we reach you and work with you?
So I'm mainly at The Most Extraordinary Woman on Instagram. And you can also find me at Amara Luciano on Facebook. I lead my business in a very different way. I don't have a website. I don't have anything that's traditional or whatever. You will find the links that you need if there's something that you're enchanted by, you want to know more on. All the things that you need will be in my bio. But again, you Google me, you'll find scattered things. Go to Instagram, find me at The Most Extraordinary Woman. Go to Facebook, find me at Amara Luciano. If you have questions, my DMs are open. And that's really that's it. It's so simple.
Yeah. And we'll put all that in the show notes so you can like find that in there. And I just want to say thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and all your like just earth-shattering views about everything.
Thank you. I can't wait for this to be up and live. I'm gonna like post it everywhere, quote all the things. I'm so excited about it. I love this conversation. I love what you brought to the table. I felt like I was really talking with someone and not talking at someone. And I think you're an amazing and I knew that was gonna happen at some point. You're an amazing interviewer. So thank you for having me. I feel really, I feel genuinely received. And I think that's what makes this so special. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, of course. I feel like a lot of the stuff that you were saying was speaking directly to me anyway. So I was like energetically receiving it as like, okay, ooh, I need to do that. I've been seeing myself do that. Okay. So, on many levels, it was received.
Thank you for saying that. That is so good for me to receive right now. That's gonna make my night. I feel so good. I feel so expanded by this conversation. I can always feel like when it hits right, because it doesn't feel dense at all in my body. I don't feel tired. I actually feel very invigorated and happy. So thank you for creating a space where I could just like expand and share and express and no holds barred, and had a lot of fun. And thank you.
Yeah, of course. And thanks everyone for listening. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Witchy and Weird Pod. If you want to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest, follow us on the socials under Witchy and Weird Pod. And if you want to stay in contact with our host, Amanda, follow them on IG under Amanda Sakratoff Intuitive and Twitter and TikTok under Amanda Sakratoff. And if you love Witchy and Weird Pod and want to support all that we do, become a patron and get access to exclusive benefits like discounts on merch, bonus content, and woo-woo experiences. As usual, everything is linked in the show notes. Bye!